Football made simple. Become great at your craft by finding ways to make it simple for those around you. This is the Coaching 101 podcast hosted by Find a Way Productions with your co-host, Daniel Chamberlain and Kenny Simpson. What's up, coaches? This is Daniel Chamberlain. This is the Coaching 101 podcast. Look at me, I screwed up our own intro, Kenny. I'm Daniel Chamberlain. That's Kenny Simpson. We are joined today by our good friend, Chris Haddad, or Haddad, or
however you want to say it, Coach. Good to be here. What's going on, guys?
Well, I feel like I'm a little left out. I got stuck in Oklahoma. Good old drill weekend playing Army. Had to shave my face. You guys got to go to the AFCA. How was that this year?
It's good. It was good, man. We actually got to eat dinner. What night was it, Chris? Was it Saturday night? I think
Saturday night. Yep.
Came into town and got to, hang out a little bit. Chris and his brother and a couple other old friends and kind of talk ball. I think that was kind of, to me, AFCA. Don't be offensive, but it's not really. You don't really go there for X's and O's. That's not really,
right,
in my opinion, the purpose. It's mainly connecting, and we enjoyed connecting with Chris, and I'm sure he had. Yeah. I know he had a busy schedule, connecting with a lot of other coaches too.
Yeah, I was running around. I always enjoy the convention floor. I think just staying up to date with all the new tech and just everything that's going on in the football world. I always like to keep a pulse on. Like anything that can help our program too. Coaching at a small high school in Massachusetts, right? It's like, how can we take little things and just make it better for our program? So that's why I'm always a nerd for that stuff. So I'll always take like an entire day and just walk the floor I always go with my brother and we just see what we can do, what we can't do, and just learn all the new technology that's out there as well. So yeah, I had a blast. Good seeing you. Good seeing everybody that was down there, and good connecting with all the coaches that I think you only see on Twitter, talk to on Facebook, that you actually put a name to an actual body, as opposed to just DMing. So it's always good to see them.
I think it's going to be weird the next few years as we talk about that floor and the tech that you see. Last year, the new tech thing was the, quadruple dummy that you get to continuously tackle. This year, it was like everything AI, right? Is what y'all were talking about, how it's just like everyone has incorporated AI into some type of program. So who knows what next year will bring? Like, right. I mean, with the Tesla's Optimus robot taking off, I mean, for just a cool $30,000, you can have a tackling robot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to program or try to use a scout team anymore. You just program a robot to run that 4.5 and hit the edge. And can you guys catch him? No. Okay. Well, we're gonna have to adjust our defense then.
Yeah, we're probably a lot closer to that than we think, right? I mean, I would think that's like 40 years away, but I mean, the way things are advancing, you're probably like 10 years away from all that. But
yeah. I mean, right? Optimus was bartending this year and having regular conversations, so. Who knows? Who knows where it goes?
Yep. I think the helmets were neat. There was 1,000 different versions of helmets and covers for helmets and extra skins for helmets. And I think that's probably you'll notice that. You're already noticing that if you're watching teams playing with those, balloon helmets kind of on their head. And so I think that's probably the next thing you're going to see. A lot of equipment changes.
Yeah.
Well, they did the helmet for deaf kids to play right last year where it showed like some stuff on the visor and it would show the play the coach had put in. I'm not, and I don't know if I mean this in a mean way or not, but we've watered down football so much because you can't keep a kid, right? Kids are no longer, you don't expect a quarterback to start in the same place for 4 years. So you can't really develop your system. You can't install and use multiple years to add layers. So I wouldn't doubt if that's not where this goes. Like your playbook is just in your visor. You hit a button. Everybody.
Did you see Go Route had the little watches now?
Where on the wrist. Yeah.
You put your play sheet and you send it in, and so they just look at their little watch and it tells them what to do. I thought that was, if that becomes legal, that's going to be big.
Right.
I know it's a lot of people using that for practice. Can you use that in a game yet, or does it still have to be the paper sheet?
Paper right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just all a way of getting a coach on the field, right? I mean, that's hopefully we don't get there.
Yeah,
it's also the coach on the field.
It's state by state too, right? Because I know, like even for us in Massachusetts, we can't use huddle sideline or any replay system on the sideline. So like we're a little bit handcuffed with that. We had it for 1 year and it was the best. Man, I was using that like crazy, just being able to break down everything. Now I see pretty much every other state can do it but us. So I'm hoping rules and the tech start to change, but the argument with that was the unfair advantage, right? Some teams could afford it, some teams couldn't. So they just said, all right, nobody can have it. And so we're still coaching, I guess, in the olden days, you could say, as opposed to using all the new technology. But it's fun to see, right? It's fun to see what's out there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you guys got to enjoy some AFCA. Hopefully next year my schedule works a little better. If not, I'm like 2 years from retirement, so I'm not too far off from getting out of the military and just be full-time football. Kenny, let's do quote of the week.
Sure. So guys, we got Dr. Phil today. So don't judge me too hard. It's pretty good. So this comes out of Team Themes volume number 3. So there's 4 volumes of Team Themes, all available over at FB Coach Simpson. This one is talking about authenticity. Like we talk about kids a whole lot about being who you are and owning that and trying to be better, but being yourself, not somebody else. So the quote is, be your authentic self. Your authentic self is who you are when you have no fear of judgment or before the world starts pushing you around and telling you who you're supposed to be. Your fictional self is who you are when you put on a social mask to please everybody else. Give yourself permission to be your authentic self. And so again, to me, a lot of times that would apply to coaches that are listening to this as well, is it's okay to emulate people and it's okay to want to be a better version of yourself, but give yourself the ability, like if you're, and we talk about this all the time on the podcast, if you're a nerdy dude, own that and be that. If you're somebody who is a player's coach, be the best version that you can. If you're super organized, that's great. And it's okay to grow and to become better, but don't try to act like somebody you're not.
That's I listened to a whole podcast, and we're talking program building today. So this quote is actually a really good way to start it off, because you can't build a program around a fake sense of yourself, right? It's never going to work. Kids see through that crap. Just there's different types of people, and you don't have to be the smartest or the best or the most macho or whatever. Kenny, you said if you're a nerd, be a nerd. Like there's nothing wrong with being a nerd. Just be you, so the kids can understand who that is and know it's going to be consistent. People start faking. Kids see through that crap, man, and they don't want to play for a fake coach, regardless. You could be the next Bill Belichick, but you're being fake about it, and people don't like that. So,
and one caveat I would add to this: if you're lucky enough to be a head coach, be aware of who you are and intentionally hire guys that are different than you. A lot of times it's easier to hire guys that are like us because we want to hang out with people that are similar. But I think those staffs that do really well have multiple strengths, and they're intentional about it. Like I know I am intentional about making sure we have different personality types on our staff that can reach different people.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, awesome. Appreciate that, Coach. I guess real quick, let's just knock out the ads and then we'll get on. So, Coach, if you don't mind, share some ways we can make things simple for our staff and our athletes. What's up, coaches? I want to talk to you for just a few moments about your program. The longer I'm in this profession, the more I understand that efficiency is truly the name of the game. We're talking offense, defense, doesn't matter, right? Eventually, you're going to come down to checking out your efficiency. So I have to ask you, are you doing everything in your program the most efficient way, right? Are you fundraising the most efficient way? Are you representing your players and your program to the public in the best way? Are you planning to build the facilities the most efficient way? If you answered no to any of those, or really even if you answered yes to all of them, and you haven't contacted Mark Bridges at Ace Sports, you're missing a key step. So look, Mark and his team, they are the go-to group for video board and scoreboard installations for your school. They're not just football either. Mark can help you mock up your newest video board for that new stadium, or maybe even your old stadium, right? That's where Mark and the guys come in. And we're not just buying a flashy thing, right? Yes, it's nice. It's pretty neat to have that big scoreboard, that big video board, but you're also, you're investing back into that program. You're investing into that newest fundraiser. Sure, you can keep selling your discount cards, your beef jerky, hosting pie auctions, whatever it is that you like to do. But let's just be honest with ourselves, guys. We're not making enough money for those big ticket items. For the big ticket items like turf, an indoor facility, that's where you need a big ticket item fundraiser. That's what Ace Sports is offering you today. Guys, I've talked to Mark several times now, right? And it always comes down to big school, small school. Right? Well, of course, the big schools can afford that new video board, but the small schools really can't. It's just not true anymore, man. Your school isn't too small, and I promise. Okay, 1A, 2A schools, it doesn't matter. Mark and the guys, they're helping them out. Contact Mark today at mark.bridges@acesports.com and let him come give you a quote. Let him show you and your administration the plan. Now, really, it's the cheat code, right? Let him show you the cheat code that is fundraising with Ace Sports video boards. Tell them Daniel sent you. This episode is brought to you by Athletic Speed and Movement. At athleticspeedmovement.com, we've taken Dell Basket's 45 years of speed and movement training and put it all in one place just for you. You can get the same training that NFL players have been getting for years, collegiate players have been getting for years, and now high schools across the nation are paying thousands of dollars to bring Dell in to install his system, but we've got it online for you. It's time to help your team become faster, not just in the 40, not just their sprint speed, but between the tackles and their cuts while they're chasing down the quarterback. It's time for you to help them become faster everywhere. Jump over to athleticspeedmovement.com. There's an orange button there. Just click it. It says, get the keys to playing faster. You'll get the 3 core movement video from Dell. He's explaining the science behind it, all for just the price of your email. Check it out, athleticspeedmovement.com.
Coaching 101 podcast is sponsored by Findaway Productions. Findaway Productions also sponsors fbcoachsimpson.com for all your coaching needs, with over 30 coaching materials, books, as well as 50 PowerPoints and videos and smaller materials, and the free magazine headsets. Findaway Productions also sponsors offensivecoordinatoracademy.com, all things offense, and defensivecoordinatoracademy.com, all things defense.
Appreciate that, Coach. For you guys that are listening now, Gun T clinics are live and going. Kenny just knocked one out, in fact, just a few days ago, right, as we record this. They're in Charlotte. What's up next, Kenny? Do you remember the schedule?
Yeah, I got Phoenix coming up, and that may be after this podcast comes out. I'm going to be excited to get warm. Then the National Clinic, which will be a lot of 3-4 stuff. It's going to be a really, really good clinic. Got several guest speakers lined up for that one. We were recording that, so if you're coming to a Gun T clinic, you actually will get the recordings from the National Clinic. That way you're getting a lot more content, a lot more of what's going on. Phoenix, I've got Rick Stewart joining me. I'm excited to meet him up with Rick. I've been friends with him for a while. Going to Texas, going to Ohio, going to Alabama, Boston. Chris and you are coming, so we'll get to kind of hang out with both of you guys. That's coming up in April. And then we have Wisconsin, and of course I've got right out southern Washington, in La Center, Washington, right north of Portland.
I'm very excited for Boston, and I think all things point to maybe getting to do a couple of these this year, so I'm excited.
Yeah,
get to put my big boy pants on and get up and talk to some coaches and do a little clinic. I'm almost nervous, although I know it's still 3 months away, so can't get butterflies yet.
It'll be a good time. I'm excited for it too. Yeah, just being able to show you guys around the city too. Yeah, show you all the little spots around Boston as well.
Yes, for sure. All right, guys. Well, let's jump right in here. We're talking off season today and just kind of prioritization, and then I'm sure we'll touch into moving into in season type stuff. But question number one, and Chris, you're our guest. We'll let you go first here.
Yeah.
Kind of how do you prioritize your off season?
Yeah, so I think we do give our guys a little bit of extended time off. I know some coaches will like to jump into it as soon as the season ends to January. We don't actually get going until February 1st. And we just give the kids 2 months off just to, if they're playing basketball, they're running track, we always try to push them to do something. That way they're not sitting on the couch for 2 months. So those guys right now, we have a lot of kids wrestling, a lot of kids running track, a lot of kids doing just winter sports. So we'll give them off till February 1st, and then we start our lifting program. And then from there, we actually tried this out. I'd love to get your guys' thoughts too. Like we would always lift after school at 3:30, and the kids came to us actually and were like, hey, can we try 6 a.m. lifts? And like, I don't mind waking up early. None of our coaches staff really minds waking up early. So we were like, yeah, let's try it. And, the first time we did it, we had about 25 to 30 kids. We're a small high school program, right? So a good amount of kids showed up. And then we were like, okay, we tried it out. Everything went great. And then we were like, okay, let's move it back to 3:30. And the kids fought us on it. They're like, no, we'll keep it at 6 a.m. And the thought process for them was like, they're awake first period. Like they're not sleeping the entire time first period because they're all amped up. They just lift weights. And then they can work a job after and go hang out with a girlfriend or do high school kid things right after school. So for us, like that weight transition of just going from 6 a.m. So we go 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 6 a.m. And those kids have the rest of the days off. Does it stink getting up in the morning? Yes, without a doubt, right? But I think, and I know there's studies out there that say kids need to sleep more and kids need to, and I agree with all those studies, but what works for us is we're going to tailor into that 6 a.m. Process going into right around February 1st. So that's step one for us as far as prioritizing the off seasons to get those kids ready to go. And then I'd say more on the coaching side, it's just more of taking our film and what we did well and what we didn't do well and just figure out how we can patch it up, right? Like, I think, like, for us last year, we only gave up 10 points a game defensively throughout the entire year. Like, we played very well defensively. Offensively, we played pretty well as well. So for me, it's like, okay, I love the foundation we have right now. Like, how can I layer on top of it? So what we'll do is we'll go into huddle, and I usually like to do this with our assistant coaches. You know, being at a small school, I coach wide receivers as well as being the defensive coordinator. So like we go on both sides of the football, and I'm taking like the top plays that hurt me from a gain-loss perspective and just see like why we got chunked out. Like, I have a play off the top of my head. We gave up like a 60-yard run because we misfit twice and missed 3 tackles, and the kid was off to the races. So it's like, is it a tackling issue or is it a scheme issue, right? And that's how I always like to look at it. Because if it's a tackling issue, then I need to clean that up through drills. If it's a scheme issue, well, how did this team gut us on the front end, and then why didn't we make the tackle on the back end? So I'm taking that log into like that February, March-ish, while going to clinics to see what we can patch up. So that's kind of my early season, off season about how I'm attacking that, and just making a plan formula off that. Yeah.
I got a question for you there. So y'all were very successful on defense. I mean, 10 points a game that's pretty darn successful in this day and age, right? With kind of when the air raid has infested every offense, it's got an air raid scheme, it seems like. So how are you? Obviously, you're not going to change your base. So what are you doing to change so that your base still works next year so people can't game scheme your base and be successful?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is what I've learned, too, is just not to be so vanilla. Like, I have a really good defensive end. The kid plays hard. I have a really good linebacker, too. And on the back end, I got a kid at safety that's pretty good. So, like, how can I play to their strengths, right? And I think that's, you know, if we were just in a traditional 4 down the entire time and that good player was always on the left side, we're going to run away from him, right? So for me, it's like, how can I go to odd and then move him around kind of as that hybrid defensive end so you don't know where to go? And one of my favorite quotes this year, we played a team and there wasn't really a big crowd there, so you could hear, it was an away game, and you could hear the guys in the booth, and they were saying, like, I can't figure out where this kid's lining up because we just move him, you know, based on certain things. So I guess to answer your question, it's more of like, how can I get him? Again, think players, not plays necessarily. And I think sometimes we try to out-scheme ourselves where, for me, it's like, how can I get my best player off the edge and make that quarterback think I got to get rid of this football as fast as possible? So that's kind of where I'm going with this scheme-wise, is like, how can I, you know, that really good linebacker I have, how can I get him into blitz situations where he's running free to the quarterback? So a quarterback sees 6'2", 215 running at him, right? So for me, it's just little things, right? It's like, how can I get him running free? How can I get him one-on-one with a running back? Those are the types of things I'm trying to layer on our already base defense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Kenny, I guess that brings us to you, boss. How are you prioritizing your offseason?
Man, probably similar to Chris. You know, we're blessed to have a period during the day. You know, I know not every school has that. So we kind of have that built-in 8th period where we're going to get all of our kids that aren't doing aren't in the middle of basketball or aren't in the middle of whatever, we're going to get them. So for us, it's a little bit easier probably than Chris because, you know, I'm going to see them every day. So we do give them off. You know, usually we give them about a month. This year we played a little later, which is good. And so we gave them kind of Christmas break off and came back and started lifting. I know we're going to talk about sections in another question, but, you know, for us, really a lot of the first week or month is about getting in routine, you know, because you get in the middle of the season, you have to kind of make adjustments. You're near the end of the year as opposed to getting a fresh start. You know, we try to start every year as though we're not starting with new kids, but we try to start it that way. So getting them used to, here's our routine. As we come in the weight room, here's your expectations. Here's how we're going to do all these, you know, different lifts and different things we're going to do. And so we're going to lift. We go 4 days a week lifting, and then 1 day a week we'll do some auxiliary type stuff. That could be stretching. That could be whatever that's going to be because where it's cold right now, can't really go outside. So we're probably very similar to, I would imagine, every school. I do want to kind of harp on one thing that Chris said that I'd agree with is we try to push our kids to do a second sport. I think that as coaches, that football is probably the last sport that does that, and I think you should do that. And I know I've been places, and even where I am now, where selfishly it would be better for me to have my kids the whole time because that's not being echoed by other sports where I'm pushing them to do multiple sports. Sometimes that's not being given back to me. If that makes sense. And so don't fall into that trap. Like, don't fall into that. Push your kids to be kids and go do other things and be involved wherever you are. The coaching world, I like Chris kind of transition to that. We're looking at obviously what did we do well and not well, and then I'm looking at probably a lot more of like what are we going to add? What are we going to add or take away to our offense? I'm on the other side of the ball, but what are we looking at potentially putting in? We'll probably look at 10 to 12 concepts this offseason. And then we'll kind of filter through that and hopefully come to the kids. We start touching a football around April. By the time we start touching a ball, I want to have that down to 4 to 5 concepts. And by the time we're through spring football, 3 concepts. And by the time we get to football, it may be 2 that we actually carry. But we're going to look at more because we want to see, like Chris had said, what works for our kids. Because each year we're going to evolve offensively and defensively around our kids. Like specifically on offense, I think that's the quarterback and the line play. Like those are the 2 things you're going to evolve the most on. And so that's what we're going to look at. For us, that's passing concepts this year. Years we've not had a good passer. That's been maybe different run reads we can do with our quarterback or different packages we can do. So we're going to look at that stuff this offseason, kind of filter through it, and hopefully by the time we get to April, we'll have more of an idea of what we actually want to put in.
Those are all very, very great ideas. I just have the coaching world to worry about right now as I'm looking for my next location. So, I'm just going out and you guys have both said it, finding new concepts, finding new things. Like I have an offensive system that I run that's very tag heavy. So that's kind of what I'm doing now is going out and finding what's the new cool stuff that we already have. It's pretty nice to be able to go turn on the national championship game or, I guess it's been semifinals up until now. The national championship game has been played since when this comes out, and I'll probably watch it too. But you see all those fancy plays and you're like, hey, we already have that with these 3 tags. So realizing we don't have to install anything, we just kind of, it's like playing Scrabble or something, right? You just got to shake the domino or the dice again and reconfigure your tags. So that's where I kind of go in and see like, what can we add that doesn't add? Does that make sense? I mean, yeah. I know it doesn't, but if we already have the tag, the kids already know the tag. Now we can just put them together a different way and get a whole new play. And then, a lot of the concepts we run are air raid concepts, but they've been modified and over time, changed and evolved to fit certain coaches or for certain kids. Well, I don't have those kids and I'm not that coach. So I did spend my off season going back and getting an air raid cert so that I have the base stuff like Hal Mummy's original air raid. And then I can go back and see, okay, that's how this evolved. And was there a point in the middle I need to stay or do I need to use the fully evolved stuff? So that's been really neat. And plus I've never been, and I think this is a lot of coaches, I've never been a huge pass game guy. Like I was a wide receiver in high school and we had the old mirrored routes and like you ran a route tree, right? Like that's how we called our go run a 7 route or go run a 3 route. And that's just, there's still some places in the world that's how they're doing it. But a lot of guys are into like naming concepts, which I think is great. I think it's easier for kids to learn concepts and be a part of the puzzle, not have to be told every single route. But that's not how everybody coaches. So it's good to go back and get a good fundamental understanding of the pass game and like how you read progressions. And even if you want to do one guy, high, low, a corner, I still know what 2 routes are pulling him, right? I need to know what 2 routes are doing that. So in the coach's side, that's where I'm going. Just getting better at my weaknesses. I think every coach should do that. Go out and find whatever you don't know about, go dig into it deep and go super advanced. And like Kenny said, you can pull it back, right? You can go learn from a guy who's way too technical and has way too many kids for what you need to do, but you can always pull that back and just use it at space level.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest thing too, Daniel, is just like when you go into the off-season trek, I know sometimes some coaches will make your head spin when you watch a clinic, right? Because it's talking way above. So it's like, how can you translate what they're talking about into your system and make it all make sense? I think that's one of the hardest things in the off-season to do is like, when you do sit down with a college clinic, or it could even a high school clinic too, where like just deciphering what they do versus what you do and just like translating that. I think that's like, for me, has always been the hardest thing. It's like, okay, like, cause I call my defensive end, my hybrid guy, like we call him a blood. That's just like what I've called him. And so it's like, okay, well, he's the blood. Okay, well, he's using the star as his nickel and I call it a jack. So it's just literally just translating languages and making it all fit.
We get a lot of practice. So practice obviously makes perfect. You're going to be more able to do that if you practice doing it. I love those Twitter pages. I think it's like spreadoffense.com or something has a Twitter page, but they always post a play and say, hey, put this in your lingo. Mm-hmm. And I think that's so neat because either one, you realize, well, we don't have a way to get to that. And maybe you should. I mean, if it's split zone, I mean, I think obviously not every group has the ability to do split zone, but if that's in your realm, that's a good concept if you're an inside zone team, right? Yeah. Or maybe it's how, if you're like Kenny and you're running, buck a lot, can you get an extra puller? So if you see basically pin pull or buck with an extra puller or super counter, how do I get to that? It'll make you realize, hey, I need to either figure this out and be able to call that, or, hey, that's a really neat concept and I don't need it anyway. You know what I mean? But I love those little clips because, like I said, our offense kind of has a little bit of everything. So we can go in and tag that stuff up, and it makes it neat to be able to practice it. And that way, when I get in front of a guy and he's just nonstop talking for an hour or three, that's not as hard for me, right? We've already done that game. We've already done the translation game. Let's jump into part 2 here. So what phases, like how do you phase out your off season? So I know, some people, you get baseball kids back or basketball kids back at later times. We all go into that 7-on-7 period. Summer pride. So Chris, how are you kind of breaking down your off season into phases?
Yeah, as we start to hit the spring, again, we encourage you guys to do other sports if they can. And then if not, again, I think those 6 a.m. lifts help because we're able to get those. I mean, it all depends on the coach, right? But we're also smart too. Like if we have baseball kids that are lifting with us at 6 a.m., like we're not going to, like we don't have any of our throwers, they don't bench. Like we have them doing arm care, shoulder care. And I know the kids hate it because they see all their friends ripping, 225 on the bench and they want to go do it as well. But it's paid off for us in the long run. Like last 5 years we've been doing this. We haven't had any elbow injuries, any arm injuries, anything like that. I knock on wood when I say that. But like the care in the off season is something that we care about. And, my brother who coaches with me is an assistant physical therapist, so he understands that world and does a really good job with the kids as far as helping them out. We have a great training staff as well that help the kids out. So again, just trying to, as we hit the spring, get those guys arms ready, get those guys physically ready. We don't have spring ball and maybe a lot of coaches that are listening to this don't have it as well. Like we don't have spring ball. We don't have, like we can't pick up a football officially until like mid-August for us. So like we can do the 7-on-7 tournaments during the summer. Like that's really the only legal way to get together and actually have a football. So a lot of what we do is just like just drills as far as like tracking, a lot of the off-season contact prep, getting our bodies in that sense where, we're running angle drills with tennis balls, where, tagging off at the hip, we're just getting our bodies ready physically too, doing a lot of contact prep stuff. So yeah, it's a little bit different in that sense. I would love to have spring ball because I think getting those guys ready mentally would, I think, just give the whole entire state a boost, not even just my team. And I think, we talked about this I talked with Coach Andy Ryland about this on our latest podcast, where a lot of those guys, especially in Northeast states where we don't have spring ball, are just thrown to the fire August 20th, whatever we start, and said, okay, here's a helmet, here's a shoulder pad, go run into each other as fast as we can. And like you see all those clips online, right, of all those kids, the dads are videotaping the Pop Warner kids running into each other full speed, and one kid's getting hurt. And I just think we need to do a better job collectively of how do we introduce contact at that phase. So that's always something that's on the top of my mind. I don't have an answer for it because the rules kind of restrict how we can do it, but that's the contact prep has been huge for us as far as getting those guys' body ready for when they do put a helmet and shoulder pads on. So that's sorry.
I'd love to see your curriculum on that. I've been looking for that for like 2 years now. And I don't even remember who I saw running it, but I saw a team I mean, it almost looked like they were wrestling. Like,
Yes.
right, they're doing crab walks in, the
Yep.
big guys are crab walking into each other, and just like, it's just muscle on muscle and just getting ready. I think that's super neat. That's a great idea.
I'll plug Scott Leach right now for those who want to go follow him on Twitter. Scott Leach 72, I believe is his ad, Leech. He's who I've learned from. He's the strength and conditioning coach up at University of Rhode Island. And I'm fortunate to live in Massachusetts, being so close to Rhode Island, that he's become a good friend of mine, and his stuff is unbelievable. I know he has a couple products out there as well, which I'll happily plug because it's completely changed our offseason. It's completely dropped our injury rate as well, because when you prepare your body for contact, it's ready for contact. And I think we've done a really good job the last 2-3-ish years when we started doing the contact prep stuff. Is the kids' bodies are used to it. Like, we start every practice, pre-practice is at 3:30. We start every practice hitting. Like, we have the rugby pads and helmet shoulder pads come off, and we're hitting for the first 15 minutes of every single practice. And we had to implement that in. And again, I knock on wood when I say this, but like, we haven't had any injuries. Now, is that why we were good at 10 points a game this year? I think it played into it a little bit, right? Because I'm building confidence with my young guys too. Like, we have a middle school team that practices on the other side of the field as us. Like, those guys are doing the same drills the varsity guys are doing, and they're hitting as well. So now we're building kids who haven't even played football yet. Some younger kids, 7th and 8th grade. And then by the time they get to us, like, they know where to put their head, they know how to clamp, they know how to wrap, run their feet. So as far as phasing in, to just answer your question, Daniel, like, that's where I got a majority of my stuff is through Scott.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Kenny, how are y'all phasing your off season?
We kind of look at it, like you said, in phases. I mean, that's the right word I think you need to look at it with. Is, for us, we're in that state where Arkansas can't figure out its weather. So if you're going outside before March, I mean, you're chancing it. You don't know. It could be 70 degrees or snowing, so we do a lot of our indoor type stuff from basically January through March, which is essentially the weight room, and we're blessed to work with lots of different kids. We got several that play other sports. So I think as a coach, you've got to be able to modify to those kids. My son right now, I'm very happy he's playing basketball. But that does cause issues with when does he lift. And so he got a lift in Sunday night, and so he got a lift in the other day in the morning. So you've got to kind of be able to work with those kids one-on-one. And I think a lot of times as football coaches, we're inherently selfish. We lift at whatever time you say you're going to lift. And if you can't be there, then you make that kid feel not very good for whatever reason, and it could be a legit reason. Our baseball guys, apparently we think baseball is year round, so we're going to start practicing right now. But they came and asked, hey, what if we lifted in the morning? And my first thing was, hey, it's January 5th. Why are you worried about baseball? But that's a selfish mindset. They're excited about baseball. Let them be excited about baseball. Does it really matter if they get the same lift at 6:30 in the morning? No, it really doesn't. So I think you've got to be willing to kind of work with these kids, because it is what we just said it was. It's an off season. And I think a lot of times as coaches, especially in our states, you get down in the South, football wants to be year round. We're trying to become year round, where these kids are required essentially to, basically be football players, and that's all you do. And we don't say that, but we do things that encourage that. Like, have 7-on-7 stuff going on in January or February, and make kids feel bad if they can't lift with the team. And spring football, if they're playing a spring sport, how are you working with those kids? So I think you have to be kind of intentional with how are you working with these multi-sport kids first. And so now back up to how we would do our off season. Basically January to March, I'm a big believer that it's meat and potatoes. I mean, these kids have got to get strong. I'm a big feed the cats guy, and I understand the speed stuff, and we are going to work sprint. But I'm not going out there in 20 degrees and running sprints. Like, that's not possible. I'm not going to be those guys that sets the cones up in the hallway in the school. Let's get our kids good at squatting, good at jumping, good at maybe 3-cone drill. We are working some speed and some stuff there. But let's get our kids strong. Then when the weather warms up a little bit, we are going to go out and we're going to work speed twice a week. And we're not going to condition. We're going to go work speed. And so basically go from 4 lifts a week to 3 lifts a week, and we'll roll that kind of through the summer. But our speed program really picks up around March or April. Around March or April, we'll start to kind of pick it up. We'll run that all the way through. Another little caveat I'd like to kind of throw in here is I see this a lot in football where not everybody does it, but a lot of teams do. We lift really hard during the off season, and then during the season, we back off significantly. Like we back off whatever we're lifting in the off season pretty significantly. To me, if you do that, I don't think you have any right to ask a basketball coach or a baseball coach or a wrestling coach to ask his kids to lift in season. If you didn't, why should he? If you didn't lift on game day, why should you ask him to lift on game day? So I think you need to make sure that during the season, you're still doing some of this stuff in the weight room, speed work, whatever it might be for these kids. As far as coaching goes, and obviously we already kind of talked about, first part of it, I'm looking at new concepts. The second thing we're doing, we're evaluating our players. Like that's kind of the next phase for me is which kids have changed their body in the weight room. That doesn't always mean they're going to be a good player. I mean, be careful with that. Like, be really careful with this guy's great in the weight room. He's going to be a good football. It doesn't always work that way.
A lot of them look good in shorts, right?
Correct. But usually if a kid was on the border and he made big strides in the weight room, he's probably going to make big strides on the football field. And the odds say that would happen. So which kids are borderline kids? Early on, we're looking at our studs and we're building our scheme around them, like Chris said. The next phase, I think, is looking at who are those peripheral players. Those guys kind of on the bubble of they might play, they might not play, they might be a big player, they might not be. We want to evaluate those guys and start getting a plan of action before we roll out there in the spring. I don't need spring football to show me who my studs are. I already know. I need spring football or summer football to show me which 10th grader is ready to play. Which 11th grader is going to become a starter for us who wasn't a starter last year. So we spend most of our summer and our spring giving those guys the majority of the reps. As we near August, and we tell them, in the spring, it's pretty much equal reps. Early summer, we're going to start cutting down a little bit, but it's pretty close. By August, if you've not shown us anything, that's on you. Because now we got to get the guys ready. We're going to play in the games.
That's I think I took that from you last year and tried to incorporate it with that just equal reps and then start shaving them because, I mean, the honest truth is there's kids that aren't going to play on Friday nights, right? That's what we have to be realistic with them about. But we have to develop them. You can't give all the starting reps in the spring to the starters either. Sure, they'll be a little bit better, but as soon as you've got one injury, what did you do to set up your depth chart? So,
right.
I
just got one thing. I just got one thing to add to, just as far as I want to go back a little bit towards like this February, March-ish period. One thing that we've done, which I forgot to mention, is just like set goals for kids. Like we always take a kid in and say, hey, where do you want to be weight-wise? And like, what are your goals for this upcoming off season, right? Because I think if a kid, and this is for the kid maybe who doesn't play other sports, it could be a bigger kid or someone that wants to either lose weight or gain weight. Like I think if you build a plan for a kid and help him reach his goal, maybe you check in every 2 weeks, every month, whatever it is, and say, hey, here's how you're progressing with your weights. Here's how you're progressing with your weight gain. I think it makes the kid a little bit more sticky. Like if you have kids that just show up maybe once and they miss 2 or 3 lifts, 4 lifts, like you can't set the goals for somebody and then them not hit it because they're not showing up, right? So I think like having that goal building at the very beginning has been huge for us, at least, to show a kid like, hey, here's how you're transforming your entire body. Like you want to get stronger, here's how it looks. Like you're 140 pounds, now you're 150 over the course of 3 months because you're eating properly now and you're doing the right things to put things on. So I've been a huge just fan of setting those goals at the beginning because I think it helps keep a kid sticky to your lifting program throughout the year.
Yeah, we're new this year for us, and it may be an epic fail. That's why I haven't put it out a whole lot. But we're doing a Madden scale with all of our kids. So
that's awesome.
We built the uniforms. We're going to create the players. Of course, my young coaches are doing all this. I don't know how that works. But we had 5 basic scales we wanted to measure a kid in. Scale 1 is, we call it coachability. And all that is 100% is attendance. So we rank them 20 to 0. You can get 20 points in your Madden scale. If you show up, you get one miss, you're still a 20. Every miss from there brings you down. So any kid can be a 20 out of 20 on coachability. Second one is awareness. You said awareness. Well, our awareness is GPA. And we've scaled that from a 4.0 down to try to encourage, kids to do well at school. So you could be a terrible football player. You can get 40 points, show up, get your grades in, whatever. And then we do strength. And that's a scale my guys have come up with on, like, for their weight, where they need to be. And we made it intentionally almost impossible to be a 20, because my fear was I don't want to have any kid come out of this and be 100. Like, every kid, we want to improve. So we've kind of scaled it where, you might be able to get a 20 on one of these, but it's going to be hard to get it on the other three. So first one's strength. Second one is speed. And we time the 40. That's kind of how we do it. If you're a mile per hour guy, you could do that. And again, we're going to scale that to your weight. Going to scale that to your weight. And then we do quickness. I think that's basically the pro agility for us. So there are 5 different measurables where you have the ability to work up. The entire reason we're doing it, just like Chris is doing it, is to give kids an incentive to get better. If moving up a point on the Madden scale makes a kid show up every day, or makes a kid eat a little healthier so that he can produce more in the weight room, then we're going to do that. There's a lot of other ways you can do that. Like, we're trying every year, try something new. I think that it can get stale if it's, here's a T-shirt for this, or here's a T-shirt for that. Like, what are you going to do that's kind of different that you've never done to make it fun for these kids? And so that's one of the things we're trying this year. And if you don't have to do that, but I would encourage you, like Chris said, personal goals matter. And then what are you doing to kind of promote wanting to improve?
Yep. No,
I like
that's
that.
awesome.
Yeah, I like that. Just wrote that down.
We have used, so when we start talking phases, I think it's just multi-sport athletes coming back, and then post multi-sport athletes coming back, right? You have that time when basketball and baseball are kind of off doing their own thing. And then when you get them all back and you kind of get into that late May, April, May kind of timeline, and then you get into your summer. One thing that's been really neat for us is, of course, we're athletic speed and movement schools, so we're gonna use that, and that's something we used in the gym. But early season, January, you generally have your linemen, right? That's generally who you have left, especially small schools. They might go throw, but they're probably not going to play basketball, probably not going to go play baseball. Some do, but not all of them. And so you get a chance to really work with them. And if you haven't looked into athletic speed and movement, it re-teaches kids how to run. So yes, it is a sprinting program. It gives you as a coach a layout of how to develop speed in your kids. But the first 5 weeks are just how are bodies supposed to run efficiently. And so you get them in these drills, and it's not A skips, B skips, C skips, all that stuff that, kind of has flooded the market. Although if you use those, great. It's just not what we use. But you get these big kids in there and they start doing all these different agility type drills, and they're relearning their body and where their hands are supposed to be, right? The line, sink, strike is huge for us. That's kind of the fundamentals of the program. But a bunch of these big kids get in there and learn it. And now it's a 12-week program. You get done with that first 12 weeks. They've gotten quite a bit faster. They've gotten a lot more efficient in their running. They run relaxed. Now you get a bunch of speed guys back from their baseball, from their basketball, and you start over. And now the linemen are like, oh, this is easy. Look at me doing these drills that I've been running for 12 weeks. And the speed kids are like, I'm having to relearn how to run, right? It's kind of getting that body efficiency back. So the big kids get to look at them and laugh a little bit, right? It just gives them a little bit of that one up. Like, that's the phases. Is we were here, we were doing the thing, and this is something I can show you right now that we got better at. And they can see that and kind of do some self reflection, I guess. Look, it did work. We have gotten better. We are better than those kids for now. Of course, agility kids are going to catch up pretty quick, but I think that's a really neat part of athletic speed movement. That whole program is just watching the phases work. When you start over and you get a new group, they've got some stuff to learn, right? And then, everything else is basically exactly what y'all said. You get into that off season. However, you're going to incentivize getting kids there, whether it's the T-shirts, whether it's the Something we did a couple schools ago was like different colors of shirts, right? So what shirt you were wearing that week was based on, if you'd shown up or not. So maybe if you're a Nebraska fan and you want the old black shirts to come back, well, you don't get to wear a black shirt if you've missed days, right? You've got to wear a red or a white or whatever. So I think there's neat ways to incentivize like that. 7-on-7, I think, is the thing that has thrown off most schedules, because in Oklahoma, it's really weird because you can't have practices for 7-on-7. You're not supposed to touch a football until the day of the event. So you've got to go out and practice and get good at your passing concepts without a football. And then the kids have to go compete all of a sudden. To where in the summer, you've got to work into like 5 days of wearing a helmet or whatever. Not a 7-on-7. You just put the helmet on in the heat of the summer and you go throw the football around with zero preparation whatsoever.
Right.
But I think that is a phase you have to concern yourself with. Like, when do you work in your non-football, non-organized sport practices for 7-on-7 and start prioritizing? Because look, we talk about run game a lot in the off season, right? Because I can put my 5 linemen together and run power and counter. I don't need a running back. I guess I could pass pro as well, but they're not at 7-on-7. But getting those kids out there and tell them, hey, go run routes without a football, it gets a little bit awkward, right? Yeah. So you gotta really figure out that phase.
Isn't that wild too? Like when you say it out loud like that, it's like, yeah, we just get a bunch of kids together, just go run around who haven't practiced and just figure it out. I think that's kind of why I always have that gripe with like the Massachusetts rules about you can't do anything until like you have 2 weeks before your first game to teach a kid how to tackle, teach a kid scheme, teach a kid, like, you know what I mean? It's just, I don't know. It just boggles my mind why you wouldn't start July 1st to start to like have acclimation periods to contact, acclimation to helmets, acclimation to all that. And we don't. I know most states do, but yeah, we just don't up here, which I can't get an answer why, but
we're not that far behind. I think we get 3 weeks from traditional week 1. Something like August 10th to 12th or somewhere in there is usually our first day of football practice. No helmet, or maybe it's helmet, no pads. And you got to work into that for 3 days. But I'd say 90% of the schools around here are playing week 0 now. They opened it up, so people are getting rid of one scrimmage, and they're going to play a game on week 0, so they get a bye week, which makes sense, but you'll lose prep time to have recovery time later.
Right.
But they created that monster by saying, well, you can have spring ball, but you're going to lose a scrimmage in the fall. So I have to give time from the fall to the spring. Well, then I might as well back my schedule up and get an off season, right? Extend my regular season.
Yeah.
It's all a game. It is efficiencies, right? How can I best use the 15 to 18 weeks they're going to give me to play football or whatever? So it's pretty wild, but that's kind of how we do it in phases. Last thing here, and this is just kind of you personally. So, Chris, we'll start with you here again. What are the top things that you're studying this off season? So what are you doing to get better as a coach?
Yeah, I'm still in the realm of, I think run fit wise, just keeping up with the new concepts that are out there. I know one thing offensively, which I'm loving, and I'm hoping my brother is the offensive coordinator. We talked about it a little bit, but the check down swing screens, I'm loving. So, hit your concept downfield, nothing there, get your H back arcing and just give the running back a swing screen. I'm loving that as like a secondary check down. So I guess for me, like I'm trying to see what's the new offensive things that are happening. And then obviously just wrinkles into what we can, the teams, we did lose 3 games this year, right? So like we finished 8-3, but those 3 games, like what did we not do well run fit wise? Pass fit wise, passing wise, I feel like we're pretty good. I've been looking at some hot coverage stuff. If we are going to bring 6, could I stay, 3D 2 under and still be able to get home with some pressure to take, if we don't match up well man-wise on the back end, quarterback's hitting us hot, like is there things that we can shake up in that aspect of it? So I'm always looking into just new hot coverages, new blitzes, new stunts. That's kind of where I'm living right now. But yeah, anything, if anyone listening to this too that has any good stuff, I'd love to check it out because I'm always from 4 down, 3 down, like anything, I'll find a way to put it into my defense. So yeah, that's pretty much it. But just always searching Twitter and just trying to find new things that I can implement.
Being multiple on defense, I think, is just as relevant as like the tagging it up system on offense. I think it's huge. So neat when you can.
Huge, yeah.
I spent a little time with University of Tulsa 2 summers ago, with Coach Dominic Franks over there, and just listen to them. Like, they can call the same defense in a 3-down front or a 4-down front, and they can with if you're showing what you're doing or you're hiding what you're doing, right? They had calls for all that. It basically was a tag system, and I was like, that's really neat, because the kids just learn these big concepts, and it quits being single plays and just, hey, this is our cover 3. It's the single play. No, it's a concept, and how you get there is based on all this other stuff I said. It just was really neat for me.
Yeah. Yep.
What about you, Kenny?
Well, I think Chris did a good job of kind of going through it. So did you, Daniel. But to me, we had 3 games. We only lost 1 game, but we had, I think, 3 or 4 games where we didn't have as many answers as I would have liked to have had offensively. Where the defense really, either the defense did something or we didn't execute well, or we didn't have enough answers. And so those are the games I'm really studying, because 2 of those are going to hopefully help us win the conference. If we're able to win it, there are conference opponents that are really talented teams, and they did some really good things. And so we're going to have to make sure we have answers. We had just enough answers last year, but I don't like getting into a situation where we don't have more. So what were they doing to us? And then you look at in the playoffs this year, obviously, we don't have a ring on our finger, so somebody beat us. So what did they do? They gave us problems. We won our quarterfinal game, but defensively, that team did some stuff that hurt us. And so I'm looking at those 4 games and going, okay, what did they run structurally that hurt us? So what are some things on scheme that I can do to help us? Like, when we get in those situations where we just couldn't find it offensively, was that execution? And if so, what am I not teaching well? Was that scheme? Did they have something they were doing taken away and we didn't have a great answer for it? Or was that something else? And that's as a head coach, where did we not rise to the moment for some reason? Were we not prepared? One of those was in a pouring down rainstorm. Were we not prepared for that? One of those was in the semifinals. Were we not ready for the moment? So what are those things that I can do this off season to try to make sure that when those opportunities come up again, like we hope they will, that we're going to be ready for that? I think that's what I'm looking at scheme wise, and what I'm looking at, mentality wise. How are we getting our kids prepared for these big moments? And then I think we're always looking for ways to get our kids bigger and stronger and faster. I think that's big. And I'll say one more thing. We're in a state where kids are able to choose where they go to school. And I know that other guys listening to podcasts might be in that also. I'm not telling you to go recruit, because that's illegal in Arkansas. But what are we doing that makes our program a place that I would want to send my kid? Like, that's the other question we're asking is this a fun place for kids to be? Is this a place where we are teaching kids lessons that are more than football? Are we making our players better people? Are we offering them opportunities to do things that other schools are not offering? So those are the other questions I'm looking at as a head of the program is, what am I doing to make our place the place to be? Because we're not allowed to go recruit. I can't go talk to kids. I can't go talk to parents, but I want to make it where if somebody's looking, we're where they want to go. Yep. And I think you got to kind of be aware of that stuff too.
Yep. And I've taken a lot of what you've done there, Kenny, with the different helmets every year and juicing up the uniform. What do y'all at, like 8 uniform combinations now, right?
Chris, we're 5 uniforms. I'm hoping we'll have 2 different helmets and potentially 2 different face masks. So theoretically, you could wear something new every week.
Is that so? Helmets? Are you doing the wraps, or are y'all going to have double?
I'm working with Game Day Skins right now. I'm excited about their company. I'm doing some more research on them, and but I think that's a less expensive way to provide an alternate helmet. And then I'm working with a couple of companies right now that they recondition face masks. They basically take your face masks and they dip them into different colors, and so give you the chance to kind of, the kids see it in college, and that's fun and that's cool. And that's a small thing. I mean, it's a small thing. And does it really affect winning and losing? No, but is it something our kids look forward to? Yeah. And if that's something I can do to make it more fun for them, why not do that?
Yeah. I hope all coaches are kind of getting into that. I know I'm a big believer because I've seen what you've done with the program doing that. There's still a lot of traditionalists out there that they're like, nope, we're not.
Yeah.
It don't matter what's on the side of that helmet. It doesn't win me a football game, right? That doesn't make me run power better. Well, if that fullback from Cross County transfers over, you might get to run power a little bit better, right? And maybe it's just because he wants an extra uniform. So, I think doing absolutely everything to make it, like you said, the place to be.
And what's changed for me a lot is I've got a son coming through our program. Like I've always tried to treat them all like they're my kids, always. But when you got your own one coming through, you're going, how can I make this the best experience possible for this kid? You get one chance. I get one chance before he's out of the house and he's in college. So it's really, when he hit about 7th or 8th grade, that really kind of changed how I approached it. Was these are these parents' most precious gift. They get one shot with them. What am I doing to make sure this is the best experience possible for them? Absolutely. Doesn't mean I don't yell at them, I don't get on them. Doesn't mean any of that stuff. But what am I doing extra, that I would want someone to do for my own kid?
That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah.
And I think we all say we do that. It's probably put a little more into perspective when it really was your own kid, right? So just what I'm studying, I already kind of talked about the air raid cert. Like that's where I really focused a lot of my time. But the secondary piece I'm studying is the why behind all of our shifts, motions, and formations, right? Kenny, you're a huge formations guy. I've tried to pull that up from you as well. But I think sometimes you can get into that like, hey, we're going to do this formation just because it's different. And I want to know more the why. Where do I gain leverage, space, numbers? Same thing with my motions and shifts. And how does it work against different base defenses so that I kind of have a toolbox to pull out of? If I'm facing a 3-14 that week, what can I do to manipulate them, to force them to be where I want them to be, and then gain an advantage? I've tried to put a lot more thought into my whys on those things. And that's the primary thing two things that I've been studying this offseason. I know we're getting a little short on time. I don't want to sit here and talk forever, especially when I'm just really focused on me. Let's get to our last part here, Coach, and that is what not to do as a coach.
Yeah, the lesson for me today is what not to do as a coach is forget that this is really an off season. Like I think that's been difficult because as a coach, we're full time. We want it to be all about that's what we're paid to do. That's where we are football coaches, and so we're constantly thinking about football. Like we just talked about, Chris and you, Daniel, and me, we're studying and we're constantly this and we're constantly that. I think it's good to allow the kids to have an off season. Like I want our kids thirsty for football, like not glad to be done, and I think that was a big changing point in our program was I think Tony Holler says, don't burn the steak, kind of the idea of leave them wanting more. And if you don't do that, if it's 24/7 football, 365, unless you're at a very special place or at a college, you're going to have burnout at a very high rate. And so to me, it's give them downtime when there is downtime and you have the ability to go. So, we're lifting, we're in the period, we're blessed where we can go in the period. We're at the bell. Our kids want more and we send them home. And Chris mentioned it. They're at 6 a.m., they lift, and then at 3:15, they're gone. Or whatever they're done, they're gone. Because you need to give these kids a chance to get away so that they want to come back. And I think that's a big lesson that a lot of coaches need to learn is it's a full-time profession for you. It's a sport for these kids.
Absolutely. That's a great way to look at it, Coach. Well, Chris, man, we're glad that you could jump on with us today. We'll start our closeout here. First, I want you to please plug all of your Victory stuff, please.
Yeah, victorysports.com, VIQTORY sports.com. You can find me at Chris Victory on Instagram and X, now we're calling it, not Twitter. Sure. And same thing with all the Victory Sports handles. It's just at Victory Sports. Trying to do a lot more content, too, on YouTube. We do have 2 channels on YouTube. We have the Learning Football, which is one just to kind of explain the basics of the game. And then we have a coaching one that's more steered towards X's and O's. The podcast is hosted there. And everything that we do more in-depth coaching-wise will be hosted there as well. So one has a white Victory logo, one has a black Victory logo. But, yeah, that's where you can find me and consistently posting content every single day to help coaches get better.
Your podcast is kind of new, right?
Yeah. We just launched it with Kenny. First episode last week, and so by the time you're hearing this, we may be a few episodes in. But yeah, we're just trying to do one a week, and yeah, just trying to 30, 35, 40 minutes, just pack as much value as we can into it. It's been great. It's been great so far.
The having been doing this for about 3 years now, the timeline almost seems impossible. Like once you sit down with a guy that talks ball, and it's me and Kenny and me and Joe, and like it doesn't matter who you sit down with. 30 minutes is hard.
It's very hard.
It's very hard to clip it.
Yeah, because
and honestly,
is good.
The long format's coming back, man. I don't know if it was just the Rogan style of 3 hours, but like 2 hours is that new window of people want to listen to a long format thing. So,
right.
Good luck on trying to keep it at 30. I hope you can.
it probably will. I think me and Kenny were 45. I think the last one I just recorded was about an hour. So, ideally, I can't.
Well, I'm pumped to listen to it. I listen to Kenny's, and I'll jump over and listen to your new one today for sure.
Awesome.
Sponsors for the podcast are going to be Ace Sports. If you haven't reached out to Mark or Ryan, please do so. Get them a chance right now to get in front of your admin when there's not the high pressure. They've got some time to work. Look, the cost of all these things are market value, right? If you're trying to get a new board installed, the price of the materials to create the board, the work, there's labor that goes into putting it up. All that stuff's market value. So give them a time now when it's the cold season, and they can work prices and fluctuate and help you. That gives you the best chance. If you wait until May, June, something like that, and try to get a board bought, guys, you're just hurting yourself. Getting the board is still the best option. Doing it that late in the season is going to be kind of a pain. Coach Simpson, you are at everything FB Coach Simpson, right?
Yeah, pretty simple, man. FB Coach Simpson, a lot of stuff. Headsets over there. Chris is also writing for us. You get two of the writers on headsets are on here. FBCoachSimpson.com/headsets. I know Chris also hosts headsets over at his website too.
Yep.
I think we had over on my website alone, we had 50,000 downloads. I'm sure Chris has had more. So chance to share football if you want to write for us. We're always looking for writers.
And now's the time. Get in there now. If you're watching this live, especially if you get in on the recording and you want to do the headsets, you may have missed one or two magazines, but we'll still get you in. It's still a great way to, I say the true form of mastery is to be able to teach things, right? So it's an excellent thing. When you start writing down what you know, you may find kind of some kinks in your the way you do things. So social media, I am at Coach Chambo OK on Twitter /X. Find me on Facebook at Daniel. I think it's Chamberlain 2006 is my the thing that you put in. I don't Facebook very much. You can find me at chamberlainfootballconsulting@gmail.com. If you want to send me a message, you want to come on the podcast, you want to write for headsets, anything, you can reach out to me and help with that as well. I do have a website, chamberlainfootballconsulting.com. I need to do that in the offseason. That's what I need to do. I need to get with you guys that are good at this and be like, please help me be good at this, because I am not good at that website stuff. And then the Patreon, where I'm helping coaches get better at what they do every day, in season, off season, consulting. Just let me know what you need. Kenny, you said yours. Chris, is there anywhere else? What's your Twitter again?
Just at Chris Victory, ChrisVictory.
There you go.
Yep.
Podcast is at Coaching 101 Pod. We want to thank you for being a listener to the Coaching 101 podcast. We hope you'll join us next week as we continue to make the complex more simple. Please consider subscribing to the show so you'll always know when the new episodes are out. Chris, thank you so much for joining us, taking time out of your day to be on. I hope we didn't rush you back from AFCA.
No. This is great. I appreciate you guys having me on. I love what you guys do, and always a fan of to come on and support you guys.
I met last year we got to do this live. We did our episode live.
Yeah, we did. Yeah,
your brother
awesome.
And as soon as I was logging it in this morning, I was like, man, I wish I could have gone, but Army took that away. We'll leave you with this. It's hard to beat someone who never gives up, no matter the situation. Find a way.